everyone. We're going to get started, so please take your seat. Great. Good morning, and welcome to RPRA's annual public meeting. I'm Jess Turquette, RPRA's Manager of Communications, and I'll be your MC this morning. We're really pleased to have you with us today, both in the room and online, as we reflect on a year of progress, milestones, and evolution. Today we're hosting over 150 people in the room and almost 500 people online. So thank you again for keeping interested in our work and coming along for the journey. I'd like to start today's proceedings with a statement of reconciliation. Under the Resource Recovery and Circular Economy Act, we are required to have regard for protecting the natural environment and human health while performing our duties under the Act. As such, we acknowledge the environment we are working to protect are the traditional lands of First Nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Cree, Algonquin, Oji-Cree, and Wendat peoples. We feel it's important to go beyond a land acknowledgement and offer the statement of reconciliation to Ontario First Nation peoples. RPRA recognizes the historical damage to the environment and human health caused directly by the improper disposal of materials RPRA now regulates, such as tire dumping and fires in Six Nations in 2013 and Zebashing First Nation in 2005. We've listened to First Nation band staff, Indigenous organizations, elders, and community members, and have learned that protecting the natural environment is a shared priority amongst us all. We are hopeful that this mutual goal can be the starting point of building trusting relationships with First Nation communities in Ontario. Currently, RPRA supports First Nation band staff to understand and access resource recovery programs we regulate. We also collaborate with Ontario First Nations Technical Services Corporation to help communities access our programs so First Nations do not bear the costs of recycling regulated materials. We continue to do the work as individuals and as an organization to understand the history and the truth of Indigenous peoples' experience in Canada. This work is ongoing, and RPRA is committed to continued learning and meaningful action toward reconciliation. As we progress, we will update our corporate documents and commitments to reflect our evolving understanding and efforts. Before we begin today's proceedings, just a couple of housekeeping items. For those in the room, washrooms are located to my right and your left. There are 3 emergency exits, so in an event of an emergency, please proceed to one of the doors marked with an exit sign. Each table has a QR code, or a little piece of paper with a QR code. There's 2. On one side, it's a link to our 2024 annual report, which you'll be hearing highlights from throughout this morning. And the other side is a link to a short survey that we would love for you to fill out and provide feedback. As you'll notice, we're doing things a little different this year. So, and then for those online, you'll be sent a link to a survey to provide your feedback as well towards the end of the meeting. With that, we'll get started. So as I mentioned, the format of this year's APM is a little bit different. We're going to skip the speeches at the podium. Other than me, you won't really see anyone at this podium. Instead, we're going to have Cam Perrick, RPRA's Director of Programs and Stakeholder Relations. He's going to sit down with RPRA's Board Chair, CEO, and Registrar to have a discussion about what RPRA has been up to this past year. But one thing we won't be changing is your opportunity to ask RPRA leadership's questions. Whether you're in the room or online, that opportunity will come at the end of the panel discussion, and we'll be taking your questions. So for now, please join me in welcoming the panelists to the stage.
Thanks, Jess. So Jess didn't say this in her introduction. Maybe folks online can't see this, but this is a really full room. This is probably the most well-attended APM we've had since the pandemic. So this is fantastic. Thanks everyone for coming out. Lots of interest in RPRA and learning more about Ontario's resource recovery systems and circular economy. So hopefully we'll share even more and you'll walk away with a great understanding of what we've been up to and where we're headed. So I want to thank our panelists for joining us and agreeing to this format. And for those in the room, we're interested, as Jess said, in hearing your feedback. If this is a good way to approach our APM, love to hear it, and we'll keep doing it. So I'm going to put our first question to Noah. Noah, it's your first full year as our CEO. You took over around this time last year. Lots of experience at RPRA, held many roles. You're general counsel, registrar, chief of strategic initiatives. Share with us how it's been going and maybe some highlights from the year.
Sure, thanks, Cam. So welcome, everyone. It was, from my perspective, it was a smooth transition. Like Cam said, I've been at RPRA on the executive team, leadership team since 2018 in a few different roles. I know when I transitioned to CEO, I had support from Mary, from Robert, from the rest of the executive team, from the rest of the board, that allowed me to kind of hit the ground running in the middle of 2024 and try to push forward a few initiatives with leadership support, with the support of our dedicated staff, including a focus on improving our data analytics function, a focus on improving our order-to-cash process, trying to build up some of the internal planning and process work to kind of catch up to all of the growth we've seen over the past few years. So I think from my perspective, and obviously our results are in our annual report, so it's been pretty smooth. There's been some changes, including a fateful beard trimming accident a few months ago, but we roll with change here at RPRA, and that's what we do.
And you talk about the information in our annual report. We've also shifted, I know you're a big champion of this, shifted to doing even more reporting outside of that annual report on our public reporting website. So we've shifted focus to data analytics, which we talked about, and maybe folks don't understand that, what RPRA's been up to there. Can you share a little bit about data analytics, what it means to RPRA, what we've been doing, and similarly, what we've been doing on public reporting, because we've been talking about public reporting for a while. We've been hearing from our stakeholders that they want more public reporting. Maybe talk about the impact of what we've been doing and how it helps our registrants and stakeholders.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll start. One of the things we were able to finish last year after I transitioned was to finalize our strategic plan. Part of that is a new mission statement for RPRA. Obviously, you can find it on our website. For me, really clarifies like a three-part delivery mandate that we have: effective compliance and enforcement, excellent registry service across all our programs, and trusted data that we report publicly on the progress of our digital registry service and circular economy programs. And data analytics is really key to helping us deliver on all three of those big pieces of our mandate. It's helping us to get out more and more accurate data. It's helping us understand better how to serve our registrants through our registry. And it's helping Mary and her team make better decisions on compliance and enforcement. So I was happy to be able to that we were able to invest in building out our data analytics capability, and that's still going on. And hopefully you folks are able to kind of see the results of that in improved delivery on those three pieces of our mandate.
Okay, so we've heard folks about the need for more public reporting, better service, and effective enforcement. And hopefully we're doing a lot more public reporting, more data, doing it more frequently, and listening to the needs of our registrants. What do you guys want to see? And when there's instances when we can share things, we want to be as transparent as possible. Now, same thing with Mary and your team. Can you share a little bit more? We've heard about requests for more information about your team's work. What are we now publicly reporting related to compliance?
Yeah, so we hope to be reporting more soon, more activity-based metrics so folks can see what we're up to, because it is difficult to always know what the team is doing. We don't talk about individual compliance cases with anyone but the regulated party. So when we're closing, for instance, 1,200 compliance cases in the previous year, over 1,200, that's not something you see unless we're putting it out there as an activity-based metric. Obviously, we don't want KPIs around things like that. We want, obviously, I'd want a KPI of 0 because everybody would be complying. But activity-based metrics is critical for the producers and for our registrants to understand what we're doing at RPRA, how we're helping you. And with that too, the data is just critical for us being able to figure out where we're focusing our efforts. So data is critical to us in terms of, Noah was mentioning those 3 pillars. So you've got our compliance and enforcement. Without the data, we don't know what's being supplied into this province. Without the data being accurate, we don't know whether the targets are being calculated correctly. So that's the supply data coming from our EPR producers, reporting in, telling us how much of something they put into the marketplace. Without that data and without it being accurate, the targets could be too high, the targets could be too low, you could have free riders who aren't paying their fair share into the system. So the data is critical there. And then around performance, when the haulers and the recyclers are all reporting into us what they actually did with the material on behalf of those producers, making sure that the data there is accurate and correct, and that we're providing that information to industry so that they're able to make the right investments in Ontario. They're able to see how much of this material is moving. And then the last component around registry services. So not just to our EPR producers here, not just to our EPR haulers and recyclers and our producer responsibility organizations who really work and strive to bring the producers into compliance, but also around enhancements to our registry. Last year, we were able to increase our registry enhancements by 10% compared to the previous year. And we chose enhancements based on data. We chose enhancements that would help us clear 500 manifest backlogs in HWP. We chose enhancements based on the data that we knew would help all of our registrants across all of the programs. So the data is absolutely critical, and one of the main reasons Noah is saying that it's very key that we're building that functionality up even more, including reporting it out to all of you so that you can use it to see what RPRA's up to, so that you can use it to make these investments.
Yeah, maybe, Mary, I'll just put a plug in for our website. So public reporting, again, Cam talked about it, Mary talked about it. Really important for our transparency, so you guys know what we're doing, but also for the health of our programs. It's fundamental to what we do. There's a lot of information that doesn't make it into our official annual report and business plan. It sits on our website. There's a public reporting page on our website, so we encourage you to take a look at it.
There's also a compliance activities page where you can see last year we issued 16 orders, compliance orders, and 3 administrative penalties. So you can see that RPRA is doing the very critical work that the province has empowered us to do.
That's great. So lots of information to support our regulated community. And if you need more, don't be shy and let us know what's missing, and if we can provide it, we'll do our best to do that. Now, Noah mentioned our strategic plan, which is new for us, and 3 of our main strategic goals. Now, I want to turn it to Robert, who, as our board chair, is responsible for providing with our organization, strategic guidance, and I want to know a little bit more about the development of the strategic plan and what your role was in that and what it's all about.
Great, thank you, Cameron. And I'd like to join my colleagues on stage to thank everyone for joining today. As Cameron said, I think this is a full house. And for those that joined online, thank you. I see our regulated community, digital reporting service users, I see ministry staff and other stakeholders. And we're so appreciative that at this busy time of the year that people have made a chance to come here. That we're very thankful for. It's very important for the board and staff that we're accessible to you. And we have a number of ways we do that, but the annual public meeting is critical to that. Yes, Cameron, strategic planning is one of what I think are the 4 big things of a board of directors of any organization. First one, ensuring that there's a high performing team. And yes, we have one, we have the best. We announced last year Noah's transition to CEO, which has been absolutely fantastic. We thought we had the best with Frank, and we got another best with Noah, and it's been absolutely wonderful. Mary, as registrar, a modern registrar, who is trusted by the board, and I think by the community. And we are very female-heavy staff. We have Lisa, who is our chief information officer, that's responsible for functionality and keeping the registry and digital services running and modernized. We have Lorella, who is our CFO, our chief financial and administrative officer, so she runs both finance and administration. We have Wilson, who's in the room, who is responsible for our programs and communications, public affairs. And we have Emily, who is our chief legal officer. So we have 4 of the 6 are female, which is absolutely terrific. And we are joined also by board directors and staff today, and we're thankful for those that made the time to be here. I think it's, as I mentioned, it's really important. The other 3 things that we're responsible for is the enterprise risk management framework, for oversight of that, and our financials. And then the strategic plan is actually something that we own. That is owned at the board level. And I think it's imperative that we do it. And this was the first year, 2024 was the first year that we actually came out with a long-term strategic plan, meaning 5 years. Before that, it was business planning on a year-to-year basis. We started that process in 2023 and did much of the work in 2024. And you will see it on our website. It's a very light read. It's meant to be high level. And I do encourage you to read it. It does lay out our 5 priorities. I think it's critical that it informs this organization and ensures alignment, not only organizationally, but with government, regular community, and the public. It was an interesting year in that it was the first year that we didn't have any new mandates. Now, having said that, I know you've been busy. We're still transitioning Blue Box, and we have a lot of work on all the programs, and of course, our digital reporting services. That has kept us very busy, but that did also give us time to reflect. And that's why we chose 2024 as the year to come out with a 5-year plan. As I mentioned, it informs our business planning, and we can talk a little bit more about that in another session.
Maybe, Cam, I'll just add to that. So Robert's exactly right. At the beginning of 2024, we were very excited to have our first year with no new, full new program on the horizon. But of course, our ministry friends, some of who are here right now, gave us some very substantial amendments to 4 of our regulations in 2024, which were approved at the end of 2024, which I know Mary and her team and many others at RPRA are very busy implementing. And of course, they're always busy in the ministry and government, and there are new proposals for change. So that definitely keeps us busy and keeps us focused on how to manage change both internally at RPRA. How are we set up so we can implement the mandate we're given and the changing mandate we're given, and how do we help our registrants, our regulated community, deal with this change, with this ongoing transformation.
So let's pull on that. I'm going to go off script a little bit. What does it mean for RPRA? When we receive an amended regulation and that we're tasked with implementing, we say, oh, it's a lot of work. We're busy. What does that mean? Like, what do you have to do, Mary, and your team when we say you have a new batteries reg or a few changes from the comms side, the registry side, procedures, like all the things?
So let's talk about that and take a moment too, because I know there's a mixed audience here of our EPR producers and service providers, as well as HWP and excess soils. We also have the ministry in the room, as Robert mentioned, so I want to talk about that for a second. We also have our board, some of our board members, and a lot of RPRA staff. So how does this all work together? So first, the ministry sets the policy. The ministry is the one that decides what the outcomes need to be, what the objectives are, not RPRA. So when the ministry decides they want to make amendments to a regulation, for whatever reasons they're making the amendments, RPRA does participate in that to make sure that we're having a conversation about operational impacts on RPRA, time, resourcing needs, all of that. So those conversations do happen, but not from a policy side. RPRA isn't a policy setter. It's the ministry's decision what policy is being set in this province. Our job, once cabinet passes, so there's a lot of work that happened in 2024 to do that. So before we talk about cabinet passing the law, a lot of conversations with the ministry so that they can understand we have an IT system, we have a registry. What are the impacts that might happen depending on the amendment, just so that they can understand all of that. And then once the cabinet actually passes a regulatory change, then it comes over to RPRA to operationalize. And what that looks like is exactly what Cam was alluding to there. We have to review all of our registry procedures to see if any have been need updating. Are there new compliance bulletins, new FAQs that are required? Do we need to make registry changes and enhancements? And the regulatory reform last year led to some of those. The more time we have to make the registry system changes, anyone who works with an IT system, no matter how good it is, it doesn't turn on a dime. So you need time to be able to educate all of our EPR registrants, as well as operationalize the changes for what they need. And we're still not even done operationalizing the changes as a result of the 2024 regulatory amendments. So we need to educate, we need to make the changes, we need to update all of our documentation, and that does take a fair amount of resources and time, even for seemingly innocuous changes. Can sometimes have those ripple-on effects. But again, the ministry is the policy setter. They have reasons and objectives they want to achieve with those changes. So RPRA will absolutely implement them, but it does take time. And I know for those regulatory reform, there's a lot of folks who have been very patient with RPRA as we're rolling out those changes, making the communications available for you, trying to have those conversations, especially with the pros, a lot of collaboration with the pros this time around, so that the pros could help us amplify the communication message this year around the regulatory changes. It was something we tried out this year and we want to do more of, working directly with the pros so that they can amplify the message to the registrants. It's different than any of our HWP digital reporting excess soils registrants that are completely unimpacted by this, but there's a fair amount of work that goes into regulatory reform around our EPR regulations.
So reg change means a lot of work for us, but it also means a lot of work for our registrants, right? They've got to understand what the changes mean for them. We help them do that, but acknowledging that asking them to do new things takes time. Whether you're a producer and you have to collect data in a new way, or if you're a service provider and maybe you have to manage your material to a new standard or a new target. So that takes time as well. It's not just us that are adjusting, industry's adjusting too. So we talked about the strategic plan a little bit. We've got a plan now. We're headed in a direction guided by our strategic goals, but now all of a sudden there's a very challenging economic environment with our largest trading partner in the South. Does that mean that we're not going to change? We're just going to keep going with our plan? Like, how are we going to be reacting to our industry's challenge, the regulated community's challenge? Robert, maybe you can speak to a little bit about that.
Thank you, Cam. That's a bit of an aggressive question. I thought this was supposed to be an Oprah setting. It feels like we're Fifth Estate here and you're the investigative reporting. But look, our legislative mandate is our legislative mandate. We have to operate within two acts, our RCEA and WDTA. We also have letters of direction, which you can find on our website, operating agreements. We have service level agreements, all of which is made publicly available. So we have to govern like that. We are a compliance enforcement agency. Obviously, it's very critical that we do so in a way that that helps transition. This is about change management, for not only for the province, but I think for the world, as everyone's going through this at different levels and different paces. But we're not immune to what's going on. I mean, the macroeconomic impacts, trade war, and other things that are unfolding, over the last month, are having very, very negative impacts on industry and people and public perception of, frankly, everything. But we're one piece of it. Mary, is a critical piece. The reality is Mary can affect more change than what the rest of the organization do. You have broad statutory powers. You have a lot of discretion. And your deputy registrar, your compliance team, your enforcement team have a lot. And I know that from the board's perspective and management's perspective, we absolutely have trusted you. You are a modern regulator. you think about ways that you're implementing compliance. I've obviously seen the notices and everything comes out from your office, and I think that there's a thread there around how you're trying to impact and trying to lessen whether we call burden, red tape, or just the ease of doing business. And it doesn't only impact our regulated mandates, it also impacts our digital reporting services because it all ties back on a technology level. But I think from our perspective, the strategic plan that I mentioned earlier is really just what we want to achieve. It's high level, as I mentioned. What it really does is informs our business plan. And our business plan is an annual plan. We release it around sometime in early October. So we consult heavily on it. The business plan, in other words, is a budget. It impacts our fee setting, and so that's where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. That's in the business plan and our budget is where we're going to address issues that are beyond just RPRA's mandate in terms of impact on our community. So that's where we're going to focus, and I encourage you to look at that. I think you'll see it reflect the things we're talking about here today.
So yeah, we've definitely heard from our registrant businesses that it's hard out there. Things are changing, margins are slimmer. So we're going to continue to implement our plan. But Mary, your compliance approach is different. Are you changing things up based on the current economic environment? Like, how do you react to what you're hearing from our registrants about all this additional burden due to the trade war?
Right. So really simply, as Robert was saying, we have a mandate. We have been given a job to do by the government, and so we need to do that job. But we're not tone deaf, and my team isn't tone deaf, and they understand some of the challenges because they're going through them themselves in their own homes with their own families. So they do understand the impacts that the economy can have on business, on lives, on livelihood, on movement of waste, on movement of recovered resources. We do understand that and hear that. As Robert was talking about as well, there is a separation that I just want to hone in on because it is something that I think our registrants still have trouble sort of understanding the differences, where Robert was saying Mary has so much more ability than the board does to help. And so just to take a moment to sort of unpack that before I talk about some of the specific things that we're doing and we did last year before the trade war even began, because of utmost importance to us is to make sure that these programs can be implemented in a cost-effective way while still achieving that objective and while RPRA still achieves its mandate. So RPRA's board of directors appoints the registrar. They appoint the CEO, but there is a separation under our governance model. So what that means is that when a registrant needs a certain degree of flexibility, or a registrant needs compliance discretion or an interpretation on how they can comply with the law, because we do believe that Ontario businesses want to comply with the law. They just need to understand why it exists, and then they need every possible barrier we can remove removed so that they can. So how does that work? If the board's appointing the registrar, the board's appointing the CEO, what is it that Robert was talking about when he said that I and my team have more ability to do that than our own board of directors? Once the registrar is appointed, the registrar becomes independent from the board with regards to those things. So how we apply compliance discretion, the interpretations of the law that we're making, how we're telling people to achieve compliance. The board's separate from those decisions, and the registrar under our governance model is actually independent even from the CEO. Now, the CEO and the board support me and my team and all of you by making sure that they're giving us what we need to fulfill all of that. So whether that's changes to our registry to make everyone's lives easier, whether that's additional resources that we might need for audit and verification, whether that might be just support in terms of understanding how the marketplace works. That's sort of how this relationship works, is that they're supporting the compliance function at RPRA, which is independent from them, can make those independent decisions, but are giving the compliance function all the tools they need to do to be able to help our registrants. And like I said, last year we did a fair amount to try and recognize that EPR is really hard. It's not intuitive, it's not easy. System costs are going up across the board. This was before there was even a trade war. We tried to come at it and listen to our registrants and what they needed and respond to them. To the extent that we can, we still have that mandate from our government. We still have objectives that they want these frameworks to achieve. So when our registrants come to us, when processors came to us last year, there was requirements in the regulation, there were requirements in the regulation that said processors needed to audit their facilities and prove to RPRA that they had a particular recycling efficiency from those facilities. They needed time. Not just time because EPR is hard, but that was definitely one of the components. EPR and understanding how this works isn't easy, and they needed time to do that. There was also cost implications to doing it. And some of the numbers we were hearing were quite astronomical given the system costs already on the rise. And all of this is paid for by the producer. So we said, you know what? I think we can still achieve the objectives by delaying that requirement. I think as long as processors are telling us what their recycling efficiency rate are for facilities, I think we can still get to what the ministry was trying to get at without making them do the audit that last year. So that's an example of something that we did listening to our registrants. Another one is across supply data. So I spoke about how the supply data is so critical because it sets the targets. It sets the minimum requirement that every producer has to hit individually. If they underreport, well, they're getting a free ride. If they overreport, well, they're going to make it harder for everyone to reach target. So supply data is very critical to us. That data integrity, why we're building up our data analytics function, is very important. But can we achieve the objective, that objective, without making every single producer submit a supply report verification? And we said, yeah, you know what, we think we can. So we took 230 some odd HSP, so that's hazardous special products, so not to be confused with HWP. Love that we have two programs with the same word in it. Not confusing at all for any of you. So HSP, we took the 230 producers that under the law were supposed to submit that verification, and we brought it down to 50. And we said we can achieve that level of data integrity with 50. Are we going to keep looking at ways to improve that this year and next year? Yes, we are. We're going to try to figure out ways to achieve the data integrity objective, and the free rider objective, very important to have that level playing field, while minimizing that burden on everyone. We also heard from producers and their pros, the producer responsibility organizations, who help build this system for EPR, extended producer responsibility, who help build it up to get the producers and all the registrants into compliance. We heard from them saying, you know, these performance audits, not to be confused with the auditing of the facility, all of these different performance audit requirements, they're coming too fast. They're coming too fast, and there's not enough information available for us to understand how far you even want us to track it. What level of detail do we really need from everyone in this world, from every hauler, from every processor, from every recycler? What level does RPRA want? And we said, okay, you know what? I think as long as the material is moving, as long as Ontario consumers are able to take this material to a facility and this material keeps moving, maybe we hit pause and delay that audit requirement a little bit. Data's still coming into us, but let's just pause that. So this is examples of how, yes, you know, the trade war isn't something that can impact our compliance mandate, but we're not tone deaf. We listen. We hear that feedback. We're not making those changes because we want to. We're making them because you're telling us. You're talking to us, and that's critical for us to be able to help you.
Mary, maybe I'll just repeat something that I said a couple times earlier on the floor today, and I've said before related to reducing burden, which is that when it's easy for you, it's also easy for us. So another way of saying that is you don't have to convince us that it's a good idea to reduce the burden to the extent we can of the programs we're implementing. That is also what we want to do. That makes our lives easier. Like we've been talking about, there's enough change, there's enough work for us to do without adding more inefficiency or adding requirements that are unnecessary. What we want to hear from you is, where some of your pain points are, and that helps us better tailor our registry services, our public reporting, compliance and enforcement with Mary's team to make it as easy as possible to comply, because that is also our goal.
But while achieving the objectives.
Yes.
We can't remove everything. We have to achieve the objectives. So that's why the number's 50 in that supply verification and not 0. We still need to achieve the objectives. But to Noah's point, my team much rather prefers reviewing 50 verification reports over 230. So there's a shared mutual benefit here.
Yeah, and you can see that reflected, in our strategic plan, in our business plan objectives, and that's where board oversight comes in, right? So we know, you guys know where we're aligned, where we're trying to go.
So we just said we're listening. How do we listen? If you're a producer and you've got a challenge, or you're any type of registrant, you've got a great idea, how do they share that with you?
Well, we're here. So if you're in the room or not, right, we are here right now. There are RPRA staff throughout the room. There's RPRA board members here as well, which is amazing to have, and that opportunity for you to be able to engage with them as well. Don't ever feel like, wait, Mary just spoke a whole bunch about our governance model. Am I going to get talking to the wrong person? And just talk to us. Don't worry about that too much. We've got our own internal mechanisms to protect the governance model, and we have our own internal mechanisms to make sure those messages are heard by the right people. So don't worry about who you're talking to. If you see a RPRA staff member, talk to them about the idea. We have our email, registry@rpra.ca. Send an email over. It won't go into some abyss. I know it may feel like it does because it sort of goes into this sort of abyss, but every single one of our emails does get looked at, responded. We received we had 95,000 interactions last year. That's a lot, and that's with HWP, so our digital reporting and EPR, but we are active on this. We want to hear these, because as Noah was saying, we find it efficient too. We want to build those efficiencies. So if you have ideas, just tell us, talk to us. We won't always be able to do them right away, because sometimes those ideas actually build work. So a great idea can come around, and that is an amazing idea, but it's going to take us time to actually operationalize. But just talk to us. We're here for a reason. We're on this stage for a reason. We brought RPRA staff for a reason. We go to conferences and trade shows and events. We have booths at those conferences and events now. We're there for a reason. We want to hear from you. We're not just sitting up at Shepherd and Young wondering what everyone wants. We want to have these conversations, and we're going out there to talk to you for those reasons.
We haven't yet trademarked the accessible regulator.
Yeah, you said a lot.
So
Next year.
Next year we'll
a lot of discretion or ability to use discretion in the compliance approach. But Noah, as an organization, what else are we doing to help reduce burden? And I'm thinking specifically about some of the other half of our registrant community, the HWP and Access Soul folks, that could benefit from some of the things we're doing or we have done in 2024, and we're going to keep doing into 2025.
Yeah, so a couple of key initiatives I already touched on a little bit, but part of the goal of building up our data analytics function and capability is to make some of our processes more efficient and easier for us. That includes, publishing data, so getting data out more quickly. It also includes being able to monitor our registry service better, so we're able to identify where we can improve, where we can build in efficiencies. We've also launched a project started at the end of last year, continuing this year, to improve what we call our order-to-cash process. So that includes billings and payments. The focus really is there on both making our internal process a bit more efficient, which is great for us, also great for our registrants, but also making the process on the registrant side more flexible, involving less administrative burden. We've done outreach with stakeholder groups to try and make sure we're getting it right, and hopefully you'll see some of the results of that later this year.
You know, I just want to add, we're actually seeing some of the results of that already. So some of the changes that we're making to our registry, I mentioned last year that we did 10% more registry enhancements than we did in 2023. What we saw in HWP, so digital reporting, we're actually seeing a decrease in our call volumes, quite substantially, which tells us that the enhancements we're making, so we're using data and it's showing us that the enhancements we're making, the changes to our registry that we're making, it's helping. It's actually making it more user-friendly. It's making our registrants be able to interact with it with less help from us. They're able to troubleshoot and solve problems on their own, which does mean, because at RPRA we have a shared services model, which means that the EPR component, this compliance and enforcement function, and the service delivery and registry function is actually intertwined. So it doesn't mean that I have an HWP team or digital reporting staff team. Now we're able to shift them to say, well, let's increase our focus on other things, on compliance and on enforcement, which is why you saw a lot more proactive compliance this year. We actually received comments from some of our EPR producers saying, why are you telling me the deadline's coming up? I know the deadline's coming up, but we're trying to do more proactive with you. So we're able to shift the resources because of the success we've seen in building out our registry enhancements. So it's an example right now of what Noah's talking about, but an actual example of how we saw this play out in 2024.
And we have to, Mayor and I, of course, have to give credit to very delivery-focused staff. We want to solve problems when it's hurting for you, like it hurts us too. And so that's, like I said before, that's why we want to hear, if you're feeling pain points, where those are, and if you've got ideas for how to address them, let us know.
Yeah, we heard a lot of great ideas around how to improve those billing and payment processes from our HWP registrants, and I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback I receive regularly is every business is different. So we want to, Noah mentioned flexibility. The solutions we provide, registry service solutions, should acknowledge that. Like this new HWP group is close to 35,000 Ontario businesses. It's very significant. And I think some of our APR folks don't always understand that this is equally a very large mandate that we've inherited, and a new registrant community that we're supporting, and they're important to us as well. So let's shift gears to a little bit more on our budget. So I talk about this new mandate we've inherited or been directed to take on. That's resulted in some increases in our overall expenses. Our budget from 22 to 24 rose significantly. Noah, can you explain a little bit more about where we're headed with our budget? Like, are we stabilizing? What are we going to see in this new business plan we're working on?
Yes, I mean, our goal is more predictability. Our strategic plan will help with that. That is telling us, it's telling you where we're trying to get to. We're trying to build in business planning process around that, so we can get to hopefully more predictable budgets and resource needs for us and for the folks paying our fees. There will still be investments in our programs, right? We're still transitioning to producer responsibility. Like Mary was talking about, we've got changes to, we've got approved changes, potential changes to all of the producer responsibility programs we run. We know There's more that we need to do to fulfill that. Again, you can see it in the strategic plan. There's more you want us to do to fill that. So there will be investments, but we're hoping to make that a bit more predictable. Like you said, Cam, I think from 2020 to through the end of 2023, we were winding up we got direction wind up 3 legacy waste diversion programs. We got 4 new regulations, launched 5 new producer responsibility programs, plus 2 new digital register services. That's a lot of growth in a pretty short period of time. Obviously, that's reflected in our resource needs. Now, we're hoping for our planning and our maturity to catch up to that growth and get a bit more predictability.
Go ahead.
No, I agree with everything you said. No, I think it's really important that as an organization, that what we say is what we do. And I think we've done an excellent job up to now on our budgets. We set our budgets and we come in at least to this time, to 2025, under budget. And I think that's what I think is important to the business community and government, is that we're able to forecast into the future what those budgets are going to look like. It's been difficult because we've been just getting new mandates each year, so that has been very difficult from a forecasting perspective, but I think we're getting much better at it. Pending any new mandates, we now put out forecasts. I will talk about this later, but we do consult heavily on our budget. And when I say we consult with our stakeholders and others, we actually go through the FTEs, or full-time equivalents, like where we're investing in people and technology, and we hear feedback on that. Are we doing enough on compliance or enforcement? Are we doing enough on registry? Are we doing too much in those areas? So we take that feedback and it informs us in our budget process, and we go very granular on that as well. And the other thing I want to point out is that on the registry, which is technology, and as you know, technology can be very challenging, all of our technology programs have come in under budget, on budget or under budget. And even the registry reporting, which I think is part of the reason that the ministry and government felt secure to outsource what were very paper manifest programs to us and let us deliver on those digital, because when we set the budget, we were able to meet it. And it's very difficult from a technology perspective to do that, but I think we've been very good at doing that. And so our budgets are always going to be in focus, and you'll hear a little bit about what the stakeholders are saying around that. But I think we've done a pretty good job so far.
So the board gets very involved in understanding our budget. They're obviously
Our
responsible.
stakeholders get very involved.
They
and
do
thus
too.
we get very involved.
We do formally consult
Yes.
industry as well as the ministry
Yes.
as we're developing that budget. Now, we've got a number of board members here, which is great, and specifically Ken Kaywell, who is our former chair of our Finance and Technology Committee. Ken, I'm going to turn it to you if we can get a mic to Ken just to share with the group. We talked about our budget, and we spent last year $22 million. So what did we spend the money on?
Before you do, Ken, first of all, I want to thank you for taking over the audit committee. And the fact that you have your CPA and all of that was obviously a natural fit, but we're very appreciative of that. We did, Saqib Chima was actually one of our first board members in 2017. We were formed with government appointments, and then we elect. We're a board of 11 with the majority elected and minority appointed. And Saqib was one of the first. He's also CPA. He's a partner at an accounting firm, and he left us in the fall. And after doing wonderful work as an audit chair and a board member, wonderful person. And I know that you carry a couple hats, Ken. You're also the treasurer and now audit chair. And I'm very thankful, and the board's very thankful for all the work that you do for us.
Great. Thank you. That's unusual to get a clap before you start saying anything, but I'll take it. Yeah, good morning, everyone. So the question Cameron asked was about RPRA's expense budget, okay? Similar to other service delivery organizations, the largest single expense item is for salaries and benefits, okay? And this accounts for approximately 50% of the total operating expenses. Similar to other service delivery organizations, our frontline staff are supported by a fairly substantial technology platform, which you've heard a lot about this morning. So not surprisingly, the second largest expense item is for IT and registry services, and that comprises about 12% of the total operating budget. The remainder of the categories are things you're familiar with for just operating a business, things like rent, amortization, interest expenses, et cetera. So that's kind of the top-level summary, Cam. So.
Just before you sit down, just a little bit more about the registry itself and the investment in the registry and maybe what's to come. Are we anticipating spending more on our registry, and why would we do that?
Great, thank you. So to date, RPRA has invested approximately $27 million in its registry systems. If you look at the annual report on the financial statement section of the annual report, you'll actually see a breakdown of the cost of each registry system. The registry system is actually part of our legislative framework. We are mandated to operate a registry system. Now, RPRA has done a really good job of building what they call reusable components that are shared across a number of registry systems. However, when a new material group is mandated or we're directed by the government to create or establish a new digital reporting services, we've got to make new investments in that system. So as we look down the road and see more material groups coming, there'll be more investments we have to make. We'll leverage what we have in place, but typically those are going to be future investments. One thing I think it's important to note is that the registry system is built on a modern technology platform using really well-known technology vendors, names you would recognize like Microsoft, SAP, and Salesforce. And the reason they've done this is to make sure that we protect the investment that we've already made and also ensure technical viability into the future. So.
Right, so we're doing our best to leverage the components we have today, but whether it's a new program or an existing program that has an amendment, there are required changes to the registry and there's an associated cost there. And every kind of great suggestion that we hear from our registrants on how we can enhance the registry also has a cost, right? Okay, so there was a great thanks, Ken, and I appreciate we just hold on to that mic because we might have some more questions, whether it's from the audience or from me. But I think I'm done for now. But
okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So big price tag on building the technology solution. We're carrying a bit of debt. Noah, can you share a bit more about RPRA's debt and how we're planning on servicing that debt?
Sure. So there's a lot of detail in our financial statements about the long-term debt we carry and what we used it for. When we have major registry projects, we often get funding from the bank to help us build that out. And it was especially true when we were starting up our programs, before we had fee-paying registrants in each of our programs. We're an administrative authority. All of our operations are funded through the fees we set. We don't get any funding from government at all. So we had a relationship with a major Canadian bank that helped us get loans to start investing in our technology. When major technology projects are finished, those get converted to term loans. We've negotiated attractive interest rates with the bank. Again, all this information in our financial statements. And then the registry investments get amortized typically over 10 years. And I think for all of our loans, at least right now, they will be paid out or scheduled to get paid out by the end of 2033. And so that kind of, our investments then get sort of smoothed out over time. And that helps us, deliver the technology we need to deliver.
So lots of upfront investment, but our goal is to help our registrants with fee predictability and keeping fees as low as they can over the longest period of time.
Yeah, and I should emphasize again, I talked a bit about how investment isn't done, and I think Ken also described a bit about our registry system. But it's a system that we want to improve. We want to improve it because you folks are telling us there's things you want to see. And as we're sort of building out, refining, maturing our operations, we know there will be improvements that we want to make. And what we're committed to is to making sure that there are very good business cases for when we're investing, again, aligned with our strategic plan. For major registry projects, there's board oversight, board approval for those. We want to make sure that there's good business cases for the investments that we're going to be making over the next few years.
Thanks, Noah. Okay, I'm gonna shift to a question for Robert. We've talked a lot about how RPRA listens, and I want to hear a little bit more about how we engage formally with our advisory councils. I know we've got a number of members of our advisory council in the room here today, including our co-chairs. Can you just share a bit about how we engage with those groups, why we engage with those groups, and how valuable they are to us?
Yes, thanks, Cam. Some of you may recall that in 2021, we received a ministry direction to establish 2 industry councils, one for service providers, one for industry being producers and the like. We set those up. They are posted on our website, both the mandates and the list of organizations that are involved in that. Many, as you've mentioned, Cam, are here today. It's co-chaired by our board member, Jeff Steiner, who's in the room, and the service provider is, maybe give a little wave, Jeff, and then this service provider advisory council chaired by Paulina Leong. I saw her somewhere, a little wave, there she is. And our industry advisory council by Carol Hochu. Carol, there you are, yes. And why I point them out is because these are diverse voices. These are both diverse representation on each of the councils, and they're very diverse across the councils. And it takes strong leadership as the chair, the industry chairs of those 2, in coordination with our board director Jeff, to set the agendas so that people feel heard, and to have a meeting that is fruitful. While it's all diverse, and as I mentioned, diverse opinions, diverse feedback, there are a couple things that are common. The need for, and I better get this right, otherwise somebody else will be sitting in the chair next year. Both have asked for KPIs, so key performance indicators. How are we doing? What are we being measured by? This is both councils, I would say universally, all members have asked for that. The Industry Advisory Council, so the producers and like organizations, also asked for more value for money metrics. And for those that aren't familiar with sort of value for money, people think, oh, best price, lowest price. But really what it means, and I'm going to take the utter general type of definition, is if you have great processes, if you're running good competitive processes, and those processes are defensible, you should come out with the best value. And that's a mix of outcomes with price. Of course, we want the best price, but we also want the best outcome. So if you run a good process, you should have good value for money. And the Industry Advisory Council is looking for some metrics around that, and that's something that we're looking at. The service providers asked for something specific from their perspective, better public reporting and enforcement. It's very important that if Mary's not enforcing, it's hard for service providers to A, service, and B, spread their costs and do the thing they're asking for. The IAC, the Industry Advisory Council, of course, budget constraint, right? It impacts their fees. We're cost recovery. So every cent we spend gets put back into fees. So, constrained budgets, especially the things we talked about, it's difficult enough in an average year without having all the things that are impacting business this year. And so that's been and then audit and verification reporting. This is a very, very big concern, is not only the system costs our fees, but what it takes to comply. And that's been a big issue for producers. It goes to what Noah says, the easier it is for them, the easier it is for us. But it's all been constructive, and I think the other thing I should mention is we actually had 6 meetings last year in 2024. So we met 6 times, and both councils also asked for interaction, direct interaction with the board. I attend, and the vice chair attends each of those meetings, but they wanted to actually have an interaction, direct engagement with our finance and tech committee. That's the committee that does deep dives on budget and fees, and they wanted direct contact there. So we actually did a meeting with that. We've done that for the last couple of years, actually, and that's been good. It gives them access to the entire board. We invite all the board members to come to that committee with that. So if I can ask Jeffrey, you might have a few more words as the board director and co-chair. If we can give Jeffrey the mic.
It's almost like we planned it.
Happy to, Robert.
All very natural.
Totally.
You order,
Totally
can we follow?
Thank you very much. And let me echo how great it is to see so many people here. When I first came through the doors, I thought this might be the civic cooling station area, and that's why everyone is here. Let me echo, you pointed out Carol and Paulina.
Oh, sorry for Jeffrey, for the cameras. We need you face that way.
Yes, for the cameras.
We know what you look like.
Yes, so I'm going to answer the questions, but address those online as well. But really, it's great everyone has taken the time to come here in person. I enjoy in-person meetings. And I was saying about Carol and Paulina, they do this extra work because before each of these 6 or more meetings, the co-chairs meet. I'm the co-chair from the board side, and they're the co-chair for each of the committee. We work on what the agenda is. We add other topics that the chairs have heard from the members that we should talk about in addition to the budget and the KPIs and the things that we have annually to cover. And I think it's important for those who are not as familiar to know that the advisory committees, as Robert mentioned, was created at the request, a direction from the minister. And advisory committees, they're not there to be burdened with fiduciary duties or responsibility for the budgets or operations. That's left with the board. But they do give very good advice, and it's very much incorporated. And so, the more time we do spend listening and understanding what the issues are, whether it's the industry, the producers, or the service providers, that really does make the whole system work a little bit better. And so these 6 meetings, plus as well actually directly with the board, when we have our retreats, we try to have the advisory councils do a presentation that affects our strategic planning. So it's been quite good, and I've only been doing it for, I guess, since last year. I'm the second co-chair. The system that sometimes changes with the regulations, but Ontario, the producer responsibility system is a little bit novel, and that creates complexities in operations. And so spending more time listening, understanding the business realities of the regulated industries and the players in the industry really makes that alignment, makes the system work much better. And on the main stage, they've talked about the burden reduction. Certainly the Government of Ontario has clearly indicated keeping the burden down on businesses, on consumers, on all of society is critically important. So we have to look for those operational efficiencies. Sometimes that's the ideas that come from the advisory committees. Sometimes that's the proactive use of technology, or it's sometimes regulatory changes that might be needed for better transition. But at the end of the day, this alignment works when there's the kind of constant back and forth communications. And then one of the most recent issues, I think for the first time in our last meeting, we talked about the trade war and the difficulties that is starting to present, both in terms of costs, but also uncertainties. And so another reason to double down on a appreciation for what are the methodologies for reducing costs, reducing burdens, et cetera. So those would be a few observations, Robert, that I'd make without going on forever and properly staring at the camera and addressing you respectfully.
That's great.
Thank you, Jeffrey, and thank you, Carol and Paulina, for all your work. I know it's it's a lot of extra work on your plate. You're both heavily involved in your business lives, and we're so appreciative of everything. Obviously, we can't agree on everything, and but we hope that the outcomes from the stakeholders advisory councils, which I should mention, ministry does attend, and we have a reporting mechanism back to the minister. And in fact, the minister is very keen on understanding what happens at those advisory councils. But they pertain to really three things: our strategic plan we talked about, our business plan / budget, and then the fees. So they're involved in those, and they're involved in anything else that they want to raise in those meetings. And we're very thankful for that, because it's a very formal way to get feedback outside of our other type of consultations, which we do more broadly. And I think it's worked out really quite well, in part because of the great work the co-chairs are doing. So we're really appreciate that, and we really appreciate Cam and your team that really helps to make the mechanism to make it all work. And I think it's been, very efficient and effective. And I think I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah, we get, it's a great forum for engagement, and we get a lot of diverse feedback, sometimes in conflict to one another, so gives us lots to think about, and we've evolved over the last few years largely from some advice from those groups. Now, my phone is buzzing because I'm being told to wrap it up and get to the questions. So just one more question to each of you. Looking forward, so we talked a lot about what we did in 24, looking to 2025, what are two things you're going to be focusing on, or that you're really interested in taking on? Mary, let's start with you.
Me first, okay. So one of the biggest things that we hear from our EPR registrants is about the system costs. It's been a theme that's been growing about system costs, not just in Blue Box, that's the hot topic, but yes, across the board. So how can RPRA help? We don't set the system costs. We don't determine those system costs. They're set with your producer responsibility organizations and the cost of processors and hauling these materials and recovering them. But what can we do? That's something that I'm focused on right now. How can we do anything to help with that within our mandate, and while achieving the objectives of the EPR framework that the government wants us to achieve? And one of the things that we're focused on right now as a result, and have been for some time, is about that leveling of the playing field. Free riders. Not just those who are unregistered. We've actually got a fair amount of companies registered. What I'm talking about when I say free riders is leveling out the costs among those who are already in. In something like Blue Box, if one of the largest producers was misreporting by even less than 1%, it can have millions of dollars of impact on system costs. We want to make sure that we're reducing that burden, that we're taking a risk-based compliance approach, that we're not making it too difficult for the producers to comply with all of these requirements, but we need to achieve the objectives. So we want to increase verification and audit so that we're able to help spread out those system costs. We can't do much to impact how much the cost is. In fact, I don't think we can do anything, but we can spread it out by finding and making sure everyone who is now in fact paying their fair share. EPR is not intuitive. It's not easy to understand what's in and out. Some of you are dealing with thousands of products, thousands of business lines. It's not your fault if you're misreporting, but we can help, and we can help figure it out for you and work with you and collaborate with you and your pros so that way those system costs can at least get more distributed in a fair and equitable manner. And then I think the second focus for us is around the Blue Box transition. So January 1st, Blue Box, all of Ontario finishes. The way RPRA's been working will change in Blue Box because it's fully operational. So we're turning our attention to what does that look like?
30 seconds,
So-
30 seconds, Robert.
Oh my God, 30
Time
seconds.
for our folks. Yeah.
Well, I hope you guys saw the neat thing Mary just did there with verification audit, because of course, like verification and audit, right, it's a compliance obligation. So of course it's gonna be painful for some people. It's something you gotta do. and there's burden involved in that. But like Mary was saying, it's also a service we provide to you. That's part of the value we are delivering, right? It's part of our public value in terms of getting accurate system data that we can publicly report that helps, the health of the programs, but it also helps each of your programs become better run programs. So I'm just going to name two things. One is service standards. So with a sort of a pause in kind of the scope of our mandate, we were able to take some time on the registry service side to focus on developing all the pieces we need to publicly set service standards for how we're responding to inquiries, how well, how quickly. We're going to be consulting on those later this year. Hopefully you'll see some in our upcoming business plans as part of our new or improved performance indicators. And also I'll just mention, so I'm looking forward to that, I will mention public reporting. Like we've said already, it's a key part of our mandate. Again, part of the value we deliver to the public, but also to you. And we're going to be doing reporting more data, more accurate data, more quickly, hopefully this year and over the next few years.
Very quickly, maximize stakeholder engagement. And the other thing the board is going to be hyper-focused on, continue to be hyper-focused on, is meeting and exceeding ministers' expectations in two ways. First of all, perform at an even higher level as an organization, and perform at an even higher level in terms of the sensitivities that the government and obviously all of you in this room have to the macro environment. We will be actually engaging with you, with many of you, over the next few months on the business plan, and we look forward to your feedback and hoping that you see it reflected back in our final business plan in October.
Okay, thanks, Robert, and thanks to the panel for a great discussion. Now, I'm going to turn it over to the audience. For those in the room, there are mic stands, although I don't see mics there. So I think RPRA Comms folks are active. Just raise your hand and they'll come to you if you'd like to ask a question of the panel. And our online audience, if you'd like to ask a question through Zoom, just type your question into the Q&A section. Now, I've got a few that have already come in through our discussion. One picks up on data, so I'm going to, while folks think about in the room the kind of questions they want to ask the panel, I've got a few here. So the first one was around excess soil data. They asked, when are we going to see information related to the excess soil program? Now, just as a reminder, everything that's reported into the excess soil registry is public information, and it's already available. It's searchable today. However, we've heard from registrants in that program that they want more accessible data, and we've heard you, and we're planning on publishing later this summer full data set of everything that's been reported to us through 2023. And a follow-up question from the same person was, who have you talked to? How do we provide feedback on the data, on our data needs? And I guess my response to that would be, share with us. Once we've posted the first kind of version 1 of that public data set, any feedback is welcome. So you can provide that feedback through registry@ripra.ca. And our interest is making it as usable and valuable to our registrants. And again, that registry, everything reported in there is public information. So that's our intention, is to make it accessible to you.
Awesome, thank you. So I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Harrison Brooke with the Retail Council of Canada, and building on the themes of this conversation that's been pretty prevalent, as well as that last question, I want to ask about data and reporting. As producers are increasingly being asked for data from different regulators, all levels of governments across the country, there's a big ask coming in federally around the plastic registry, the federal plastic registry. So many producers feel this specific ask is repetitive, as a lot of this data is reported into EPR programs already. So would RPRA be willing to work with the federal government by sharing their data? And if so, producers would like RPRA's help in convincing the federal government to make use of the wealth of data that already exists and really reduce that increasing reporting burden we're being inundated with.
Thanks, Harrison. I think Mary can provide an answer, but yes, we recognize lots of new information is being required of producers. It's a lot coming, especially this year in 2025.
And not just federally, right? You've got Alberta, who's got a program where producers and service providers are reporting in. You've got Nova Scotia working on it. So RPRA doesn't just want to work federally. We want to actually look across provincial jurisdictions. And last year, we started working quite closely with other regulators in other jurisdictions, including speaking to the federal government about how we can help. How can we work together to minimize that burden around reporting? A lot of us are looking for the exact same data sets from the exact same people. So finding those efficiencies starts with a dialogue, and that dialogue started last year and continued into this year. And I think the intent, and it is in our 2025 business plan commitment, that we continue having those conversations, I think both provincially as well as federally.
Thanks, Barry.
I'll just add, there are, if it's within our control, we definitely want to focus on it. I know Mary's focused on trying to reduce friction across jurisdictions as much as we can, where we can control it. If it's at the policy level, it's still something you can talk to us about. Obviously, we don't control it at the policy level, but we do get the concern. And if there are things we can do to help manage it, we want to do that.
So I'm going to try and shift between the online questions, because we've got a large audience there, and in person. So I've got a question that picks up on this, working with other jurisdictions. So the question is, will there be future harmonization of reporting obligations between Ontario and across other provinces? Like, what's in our control? What can we do?
Right, so as Noah was saying there's certain policy objectives, certain things in the regulation that we have to do, and that does differ from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Every government has different policy objectives they're trying to achieve with this extended producer responsibility framework. But where it is possible, we do try to align. So simple examples would be on definitions, which impacts reporting, right? So we might have all the jurisdictions get together and decide, what is an importer? Is an importer someone who imports into Ontario, or is an importer someone who imports into Canada? And we want to align on those sort of things. So having those conversations, that dialogue, will lead to those efficiencies in terms of reporting. We are starting to talk to the other jurisdictions about creating more formalized structure around all of this, so that we can start to have working groups around reporting across all of the jurisdictions. What does that look like? Where can we find the efficiencies? How can we work together to make it easier for the producers? We can't eliminate everything, because again, it's about the policy, it's about our government, it's about what each jurisdiction's government wants to see from the framework, but we have a lot of control, these regulators, in terms of the type of impact we have on you. And so we're working together to try to minimize that impact, or at the very least, coordinate it.
Thanks, Mary. Any other questions? We've got a hand. There you go.
Yeah, just as we talk about harmonization and that kind of thing, I would all just want to comment on the fact that harmonization of obligated products across provinces is also a way to reduce costs, but also bring more producers into the system to help reduce the burden of system costs. And particularly in Ontario, I'm talking about small appliances and those kinds of things. They are obligated in BC, in Alberta, in some of the Atlantic provinces, and keeping those out of the system adds cost as well.
Absolutely. I think the ministries, so again, just to sort of hit home the differences, the ministry decides what materials are obligated, not RPRA, but I know you know that, Clayton, but just so everyone in the room knows that, and online, it's the ministry who decides what's obligated and what's not, whether it's harmonized across. That gets back to the policy objectives, why there's differences. So that's definitely a comment I know they've heard, because they're here.
And a really good tie-in to a question I just got from our online audience, which is, are there any new initiatives planned to support the circular economy in Ontario? And same thing, that would be something that the ministry, as the policymakers, would decide if new programs, new materials would be obligated for EPR to be oversighted by RPRA, but that's not our role.
That's it.
Mary, if I may, would you say that in your discussions with other regulators, given all the interprovincial trade, discussions going on. A big piece of that's harmonization also. Do you feel that there is more of a will across provinces to harmonize?
I think it's in the vested of interest of every jurisdiction to minimize their own workload as well as their impact on their registrants. So there's definitely a will. It's about finding the structure so that we're able to do it. There's a lot that we're all working on, and we all have different objectives that we're trying to achieve. So it's aligning even across the jurisdictions as a first step to make that work. So if you're reporting in multiple jurisdictions, talk to your regulators there and tell them that you want more alignment. You want to see more formal alignment across the jurisdictions. You telling them that creates the same thing it does here, where I'm saying, we're here to listen, tell us what you're looking for. If that's what you want, tell them too, right? So talk to all of us, telling us what you want to see. I think it's critical.
Yeah, please push them, and then that helps us.
Helps get the will.
Help you. If there's ever a time to get, motivated for that kind of thing, it's now. And we're, Mary is leading an initiative to do everything we can to try and move some of that coordination forward.
Okay, we've got another question in the room. Go ahead.
Hi. So back when the RCA was brought in, it was with the promise of, by creating accountability, creating more demand for recycling services, resource recovery services in Ontario. And you see that built into many of the provincial interests. And hopefully by unleashing more competition, resulting in driving down costs. I think what we've seen in many sectors is either significantly less recycling overall, or a lot less recycling happening in Ontario, even as costs have increased. As RPRA looks at its sort of role in bringing compliance, but also giving due regard to the provincial interest, how does it see itself reversing this trend? Because we are seeing a trend in many materials where service providers are withdrawing their services from the Ontario market because the market conditions aren't attractive to go and make that investment. And so to make an investment, you need stability, and that stability is not there when we don't see the demand for those recycling services. So how does RPRA build in that consideration into its planning, into its compliance and enforcement, and the other things that it does?
Yeah, so thank you, Andrew. I think that would probably be for me. I think I can jump in. So RPRA, as we've said, you've got the policy objectives, you've got the minimum management requirements in those regulations. That's what's driving demand. So that's where the demand needs to be built. If there's not enough demand for a material, then having conversations with the ministry who have provincial objectives, right, who have provincial interests that say that they want to build a robust resource recovery marketplace in Ontario, having conversations with them about the fact that the minimum management requirements, if they're too low, there's not enough of a demand. If they're too high, there's a risk of overhanded compliance and enforcement on the producers. It's not easy on them to figure out exactly where that marker is, but it would be a conversation with the policymakers to say, this is what's happening in the marketplace as a result of those minimum management requirements. RPRA doesn't really have a role in driving more resource recovery. The resource recovery is driven by the policy. So it's the policymakers who do that, not RPRA, right? RPRA doesn't have a role or a mandate unless given to them. So unless government says, we want, you mentioned, Andrew, keeping material in Ontario, there is no mandate for that. So RPRA enforces what the government wants to see as outcomes. If you want to change those outcomes, you need to speak to the government. RPRA can't make new outcomes, and RPRA can't make things happen that aren't part of the actual framework.
Thanks for that question, Andrew. One thing that we've talked about that we can do, among others, is help to ensure there is good public information, trusted and accurate information on the health of the programs. And so hopefully you're seeing more of that. We are publishing more information on resource recovery in each of our programs, and there will be more this year, and then hopefully more next year in different ways. And that can help, inform the public. It can help inform policy making. It can help inform market decisions.
I'll also note, this is fairly new, right? Like, we're not even completed the transition. So all of the outcomes that the government wants to see haven't actually come to fruition because we're still doing the work, right? We're actually still on this journey. So just keep that in mind too, in terms of the information we're putting on our website around public reporting and seeing the actual outcomes that the ministry is looking for. Sometimes outcomes take time. You don't see them overnight.
And I think we've said this many times on this panel, but also if you're having challenges in operating in the resource recovery system in Ontario, share them with us. Like we do want to hear what's happening out there in the market. It does help us with program implementation. So I know, Andrew, I don't have to tell you, and others are the discussions are happening near all the time. But for everyone, we do want to hear your challenges, and it just really helps us with our operations. So talking about compliance, we've got a question online, which is, what are the most common non-compliance scenarios that you come across? Like, what are you seeing out there on the EPR programs?
So the number one thing is around reporting. So producers and service providers, so that's the haulers and the processors and the producer responsibility organizations, have to report to RPRA. It's not just about for that data, but it's what sets the targets, it's what sets the producer responsibility organizations knowing what they're going to be doing on behalf of their producer clients. It helps negotiate the contracts for the processors. That data is critical to come to RPRA so that we can either be reporting it out or giving it to the pros. If the pros need, there's certain data the pros get as they're planning out their activities. That data is required. When producers and service providers don't report on time, they set back the entire system, the whole process. So we've put a lot of effort in this concept of communicating for compliance, really doing that outreach with producers this year. We're able to do it because of the decline in HWP volumes that we spoke about. So we're really trying to work with producers, and we're seeing small gains. Right? We did see this year, it's been reported by my team, that there is an incremental tiny gain in terms of the amount of companies that are reporting on time, but there are far, far too many who don't take it seriously, that don't understand the impact they're having on the entire system. They think it's an administrative thing they just have to check off. It has to be done, it has to be done on time. Companies can't make business decisions for millions, hundreds of millions of dollars based on 50% of the data in. So we really need, and that is number one focus, is getting the reporting in on time. And then the second part is correctly. That's the other component that we're seeing a lot of. There were over 500 adjustments to producer data last year. It's a lot of adjustments. I've said EPR is hard, we get that. But sometimes what we hear when we're doing these adjustments is, I just added 5% to my sales data because I didn't really want to be out of compliance. Guess what? You are, because you added 5%, and you're making it harder for everyone else to achieve compliance. So work with us ahead of time. We call it reporting season at RPRA. We have staff, we have compliance support officers with the name support in their title. We have compliance officers, we have senior compliance officers, audit and risk officers, all available during this reporting season to try to help you get that data correct. So those are probably two of the most critical things, and two of the things we see the most not happening. And again, it's because producers just need to, we're here to help you, but producers need to understand the why. So this is me telling you the why, right? There's always those laws people question. They're like, well, I don't really know why that's a law, so I'm going to kind of ignore it regardless of the consequence. This is why. Hundreds of millions of dollars of your money switching hands based on 50% of the data. Please get us the data on time and work with us to make it accurate.
Okay, we've got another question at the back of the room. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Would like to compliment RPRA on their increased enforcement. We certainly have seen in our line of work the number of companies registered for blue box and other materials increase and decrease as you filter through some of those, so that's great. In terms of investments, one of the ones that we do need to see on the registry from the pro standpoint is a bulk upload feature for performance reporting. It's, I think everyone on the non-blue box side will, oh, look at nodding heads here. It is still a very archaic system that our teams have to go through. So if that could be added to the list to improve the efficiency and timeline of that. So that's, Cameron, you asked for some requests. That's one that I think most of the pros in the room here will probably agree with.
It's on
Thanks,
the
Gord.
list.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
And it's a good time to acknowledge on the HWP side, we have taken on a project similar to this. We heard in the interest of burden reduction that some of the service providers that support our Has Waste Generators Ontario, it'd be much more efficient for them to push data automatically into our HWP registry. And we've built those out and seen, lots of good feedback, or heard lots of good feedback from those businesses. It's become much more efficient. So we've got some experience in executing that. And I know Mary's heard the feedback before, and it's all part of our kind of long list of priorities for sure. I've got another question about data. So we talked about all the data that's coming into our system. What data aren't we sharing? So we talk about transparency and accessible data and helping businesses, understand the full picture. But there is some data we can't publish. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so RPRA has an access and information policy. It's on our website. You can take a look at it. There's also Section 57 of our Act, which talks about what's confidential and what's market sensitive and who we can share with. So we do have structures in place. I think a comment I heard earlier was it is a public registry. It is sort of public by default. So the data coming into us, we treat, or we think of it from a philosophy perspective of public by default, but not the data that's market sensitive, not the data that's going to tell someone their competitor's market share. That is protected by us. So that's your supply data. That's how much, how many tires you might have hauled, how many batteries you might have recycled. That's not something that we share. In aggregate, yes, but not individually. It's considered market share or market sensitive, which I think everyone who interacts with it would agree. So that's the data that we're getting in our registry. So we share a lot of it aggregated, not disaggregated. The other thing that comes through our registry, because we do refer to our registry quite broadly. Our registry is how we interact with you. It's not just the portals, it's our website. So another component of data that we protect, and I mentioned it earlier, is compliance. So it is no one's business what RPRA is doing as a regulator with you as a regulated entity and your compliance cases. There does come a point where by law we do have to make it public. So if you receive an administrative penalty order or a compliance order, that is public. It's posted on our website. Your name, everything, all of the details are there, but not the process to get there. So we'll talk about it in aggregate, right? So we might talk about, and this was alluded to earlier about some of the statements that come out of my office. So we'll talk in aggregate about an area that we're focusing on. So maybe we're looking at tire performance or battery performance in aggregate, but until we get to that order stage, we're not revealing what's going on between us and individual producers. It's the same way with CRA, they wouldn't reveal that until the outcome at the end.
Thanks, Mary. Now, I've got a question that I think everyone's thinking about right now, which is these proposed blue box amendments. Take the question for what it is, but I think it's helpful. So, although it's currently a proposed amendment to the blue box regulations, should it not be approved, now this is specifically about facilities, if it's not approved, how would RPRA proceed? Now, I'd flavor this to say, how do we operate when there's a proposed amendment? Maybe share that. Do we continue to operate under the current conditions? How do we think about these types of proposals and consultations?
Right, so it's a strange question. As RPRA, as a regulator, we don't really respond to hypotheticals. What would you do if? What would you do if? It's not something we do, is respond to hypotheticals, because the facts of everything is really critical. But what I can say, and I think what Cam's alluding to, is we have a law. It's in place today. It says that as of January 1st, facility can register with RPRA, and registration means that the blue box producers service the facility. That is the law we're operating with today. The fact that the ministry, so nothing's changed in terms of that. That is the law that Cabinet passed. So until they change that law, that is the reality we're living in. It's not a hypothetical of what are you going to do if it doesn't get passed. That's the law we have. So we are preparing for all of that in terms of operationalizing it, working with facilities, getting what we need to do ready. We've got budget amount for 2026 in there already around facility registration. Nothing's changed for us until the law changes. We're aware of it. We have conversations with the ministry. They know the operational impacts, but that nothing changes until the law changes. So it's a weird hypothetical in the sense of what would you do if the law doesn't change? It's, well, nothing's changed for me. So it is the same until that happens.
Thanks, Mary. I think that's helpful for folks in understanding how we monitor and operate when change is happening or about to happen, or maybe doesn't happen. So we don't know. So all we can operate with is
only work with what we have today.
Exactly. Oh, we've got a question in the back. Go ahead.
Thanks, Cam. I guess the legacy electronics program has resulted in a surplus of some approximately $17 million. And the question is, how is RPRA going to use that? And can any of it be used to pay down the loans that are in place, which would reduce the burden of interest for producers in the longer term?
So see, that one's not me.
I can start and maybe Noah can pick that up.
Just giving you a break, Mary.
Hey, yeah, so I've been pretty close to this file, and we're happy to share that OES, or the appointed liquidator for OES, has submitted a final report that our board, Robert, wrote a supportive letter to say that we believe OES has done all the things that they've outlined in their wind-up plan, and we support the termination of the program. Part of that wind-up was the management of any surplus funds, so you're right, about $17 million was transferred to RPRA, and the minister's direction and the wind-up plan instructs that money should be used to offset our registry-related costs. Now, we consulted with OES's stakeholders maybe 2 years ago about what to do with those funds, and they supported using the funds to basically offset their registry fees. So that's what we plan to do with the money. However, each year we do consult with our stakeholders on our fees, and management of surplus in each of the program areas will be part of that consultation. So I think the forum for that kind of, or the venue for that kind of feedback would be in the fall when we consult on fees, and it's great feedback. So happy to hear it, and it's a great idea.
Is it not true that you actually started that program and then now you're around to wind it up?
I've been around that file for a long time, for sure. Changing teams a few times along the way.
There's a lesson for all of us in this.
Yeah, it's the wind-ups of the programs have been challenging, but we're nearing the end for the OES program, and the tires program and Blue Box program are next. And behind the scenes, we'll be supporting the wind-ups of those programs and be able to focus more on the RRCA. Another question at the back.
Hi. This maybe goes back to your harmonization comments earlier, but I'm curious around the Blue Box program, the pause on audit verification requirements. Are you talking to other provinces that have signaled that they're open to methodologies that go outside of the average bill of materials? And does RPRA plan to make that information publicly available, or that guidance publicly available on their site?
So it's a question about aligning acceptable reporting methodologies. Are we talking to other regulators about what we're okay with in terms of what producers are reporting to us?
So that's one of the working groups that we're working to establish for the other provinces, is around Blue Box verification, supply, and audit. We didn't, just so folks know, for around supply, we didn't waive it. What we did was we said producers don't have to do it, RPRA will do it. So it's a little bit different than waiving it. Actually, a lot different, because we're still going to verify data and we're still going to have accurate data. We're just trying to figure out a way to do it with the other jurisdictions that makes sense. Conversations, I don't think they'd mind that we'd share, is they do these 10, we do these 10, another one does a different 10 set of producers, and we're all good with those guys for a while. Like, a lot of that's in the works. So not just aligning on the details of the verification, but figuring out ways to creatively work with the other jurisdictions, which has never been done before in Canada's history of aligning like this, where we can say, you know what, if you're good in Alberta, you're good in Ontario. So those are sort of some of the conversations we're having. I think I heard something about average bill of materials, ABOMs, things like that. All of those are conversations that we're going to start having with the producers, along with all the other jurisdictions, and our goal is to align. We don't want it to be different, because for me to be able to say, if you're good in Alberta, you're now good in Ontario, there has to be that alignment.
Thanks, Mary, and thanks for the question. I don't see any hands in the room. Oh, there's one. If we can bring a mic over to the center of the room. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thanks for a wonderful presentation. My name is Sheila White, and my friend wants me to ask a question about the soil registry. I'm not familiar with it, but would that registry tell someone where the soil's final destination is?
Noah, do you want to start, or do you want me to pick that one up?
I think the short answer is yes, it will. And so I think Cameron mentioned before, right now, all the filings in there are public. So you can look up individual excess soil projects. You can see where the soil's coming from, where its ultimate destination is, what kind of soil it is. But like I think Cameron mentioned earlier, we're trying to wrap up that kind of individual notice information in a more accessible, totally public release or publication. So hopefully that's something we can do in the near future.
Yeah, and to place that, RPRA's role is really to support registered businesses. So in this case, in the excess soil program, it's someone who's moving soil off-site. They have requirements that are set by government, and the compliance enforcement for that program is done by the Ministry of the Environment. Not all soil can be reused, and in cases when it can't be accepted by a reuse site, if it needs to be responsibly managed, that's also reported. But again, the idea of our registry is that you have a hole in your neighborhood and you want to understand who's the project proponent and where's that soil going. You can look that up through our registry by typing in the address or the business name.
Excellent. That's an excellent answer. Can I ask one question on my own now? That was for a friend. But my interest is not end-of-life waste. It's the stuff that doesn't make it into a bin, the littered environment that we live in that has been normalized. And I'm wondering if there's any thought from RPRA or any of the producers to getting involved in an educational campaign to try to reduce the prevalence of litter.
Yeah, so in terms of sort of going back to RPRA and what we're able to do and not able to do, it has to be within our mandate. So right now, RPRA doesn't have a mandate in relation to litter. That would be up to the government to decide that they wanted us to have one. I know in European jurisdictions, there are a lot of them. But it's ultimately the policymakers to make the decision of what RPRA can do. We've talked a lot about where our funding comes from. Our funding comes from our registrants who are paying into RPRA costs for us to fulfill a specific mandate. We can't use that money or incur costs that's outside our mandate. And I don't know if Robert or Noah want to add to that, but it's a critical component. So yes, Europe has a lot of that. Yes, the ministry's in the room and can hear that, and I know that there's been conversations between groups on it, but it's really not something for RPRA. But I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit more about funding in our model.
I'd go in a different direction and say that I think one of the outcomes that we're going to see from industry on Blue Box is that for those type of entities, whether they're households or what have you, I think at the end of this, when we finish transition, I think there'll be a common way, for people to understand what goes in the Blue Box. Today, there's 250 different municipalities, regions, that do it differently, and I think we're going to see a little bit of harmonization. I think once people understand what goes in a Blue Box, then you can deal with what's not in there. And I think that is going to be a big benefit of the new system.
I'm going to layer in one more point,
Please.
which is it is part of RPRA's mandate to share information with the public about the resource recovery system. So things that aren't making it into the bin, that are making it out in the environment, it is our role to help Ontarians understand the systems and how to use them and how to make sure those materials do get captured in the Blue Box or any of the other resource recovery programs. And the producers and their pros also have obligations around promotion and education to share with the consumers how to use the system. So there is a role to play in helping that litter make it into the right disposal container. Okay, another question at the back.
Thank you. Just building on the thoughts around harmonization that have been shared across the room before, has RPRA given consideration to potentially combining the verification audits among jurisdictions? And I know there's a model where batteries and lighting can be combined within Ontario. There's other models in the stewardship space where UOMA, for example, Used Oil Management Association, does harmonized compliance reviews for programs. Could there be a combined verification for a producer across Ontario and Alberta, for example, in a program where the definitions align better than some of the others?
Yes. That's what we're doing. So we're looking at working with the other jurisdictions to harmonize, to try to come up. Like I said, we can't, if I want to be able to say, you were good in Ontario, or sorry, you were good in Alberta, you had an A+ mark for your supply verification. In order for me to say that in Ontario, or for Divert Nova Scotia to say that in Nova Scotia, there needs to be a harmonized verification procedure to the extent that we're able to. There's going to have to be some differences because our policy frameworks are not exactly the same always, but for the vast majority of it, that is the idea, that is the goal. You only have to do it in one, not everywhere. Now, we're still talking to the other jurisdictions about this, and this is where you can help collaborate with us, tell them that's what you want, right? So that we're all having this conversation together.
We want it to happen. We
want
can't
it.
force
We can't force them.
another regulator to work with us, but we are very, we are pushing for it. We're open to it.
Yeah, and I think that. Thank you. I think the thought's not just seeing that if the verification procedures align and audit in one jurisdiction's sufficient, potentially sufficient for the other jurisdiction, but rather letting a producer do a combined audit for 2 or more jurisdictions. Because the data and the reporting, the methodology, and the people and the teams are going to be common across the provinces, and chances are that the verifier could be the same verifier. So instead of doing 2 separate audits, could you do 1 audit and combined report to both jurisdictions?
That's the goal, right? That you do 1 audit in Alberta, and that makes you good in Ontario. Or you do 1 audit in Ontario, and that might make you good in Nova Scotia. That is absolutely the goal that we're trying to achieve. It's not that necessarily we don't have the jurisdiction and we're trying to have these conversations. I can't walk in, I can't send one of my inspectors in to do a verification on behalf of Alberta. I can't verify Alberta sales data. I can only touch Ontario. But so this is why I'm saying there's some limits to it, but that's the idea, is that we're sort of saying if the regulators get together and agree on a framework, then once you're good in one, you're good in the other. But we can't send one auditor in to do all of the jurisdictions because we do still have our own, my powers only work for Ontario data.
Yeah, we're exploring ways to support businesses. I think it's just a good acknowledgement that your businesses likely don't just operate in Ontario. They operate across Canada or across North America, and there's new requirements we're trying to understand in Canada, but also there are a number of jurisdictions coming online for PPP programs, HSP, and others in the US. So it is challenging out there. So the more we can talk to each other as regulators, the better.
PPP being blue box, so that we...
Yeah, we're the only ones that call it blue box.
I think everybody else calls it PPP. I don't even know what PPP stands for anymore. Plastic, paper, packaging, I think, but blue box is what that means.
Okay, we've got another...
But there is good precedence for this type of passport system. Like this works in many places.
It works in other jurisdictions. And it's a great question to illustrate how far we can go, but how far we can't go. There's still a limit, but we can go pretty far, and we're trying to.
Thanks, Mary. We've got a question in front here.
Thanks. I'm Simon Kinsman from the Canadian Consumer Specialty Products Association. We heard from the panel that there is significant efforts to reduce burden, and there's alignment with the government's approach to competitiveness in this economic uncertainty. But that's not the experience that producers are having from RPRA. We've seen from the Registrar and survey data, there's been a consistent negative trend towards registrant perception of RPRA's understanding of business needs, the communications coming from RPRA, as well as the fairness of the authority. Can you speak to when producers would begin feeling the effects of this, and will it be another 4 years? Is there a timeline that we can have that benefit?
Really good question. I'm going to turn it to Noah in a moment, but I just want to flag to those who are unfamiliar with our registrant survey each year. We run a registrant survey across all programs to gather feedback on our performance. We publicly report all of those results. So if you have feedback, we encourage you to provide it through that venue. And we're listening and we're tracking areas like understanding business needs. So maybe Noah can speak to some of the things we're doing to address that.
Sure, and Mary, you can jump in too. So thanks, Simon, for that question. You're absolutely right. There are some performance measures on our annual survey. Again, that's all public. That's on our website where we are improving. But we have heard from registrants, understanding registrants' businesses, clear communications, better understanding of regulatory obligations or requirements. We've heard that. We are focused on that, so there are commitments in our business plan to help improve training and knowledge management for our frontline team. Those are the folks Mary talked about, compliance support officers, compliance officers, senior compliance officers, all the way through. And so that's new FTEs to help us manage that process, but also new technology investments, including, again, on data analytics to help us respond clearly, accurately, and quickly to those kinds of questions. Obviously, it's very important to us. We do want to get that kind of thing right. Also, I guess maybe I'll also mention, Cam, because I know you're involved in leading some initiatives on practical learning for our frontline staff on how resource recovery works, on how our businesses work. So we have a learning series where we invite businesses in to talk directly to our staff who are delivering every day. If you're interested in doing that, talk to Cam. We do site visits as well. Again, if you're interested in hosting a site visit, talk to Cam. And it's a focus of ours, and we know we want to do better. We know we have to do better.
And
Mary?
I'll note some of the data is showing we are doing better. Beyond the survey is one data point. I mentioned that we're seeing incremental increases in the reporting deadlines being met and data coming in. So we are seeing the registrants responding to some of our communications, being able to actually figure out how to comply and what to do to comply, and working with us through that as well.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks,
I think
Noah.
it's also fair to say, Simon, you being with others, big proponent of more KPIs, more metrics, more data around the things you talked about. And I know that's something we're working through and, continue to report back out to you and the councils on.
Just one final thought on that is, these things, the improvements take time. So we invest in, training, knowledge management, going out and talking to our registrants, but it does take time for folks to fully understand the new way that businesses are being required to report things and the challenges of, navigating the system. So we're all learning and hopefully doing the right things to help better support your business.
Yeah, so I'll put up, Mary and I talked about this earlier, I'll put in a plug-in for the careers page on the RPRA website.
Yes.
We do have some vacant positions. We would love to bring in people who understand your businesses, who understand how resource recovery works in this province. And if you know anyone.
Excellent. We got another question from the audience. Go ahead, Alan.
Hi, Alan Langdon, Circular Materials. I want to pull apart all these threads into kind of one question, going all the way back to Harrison's question, but things we're hearing along the way. When it comes to data, it seems like there's lots of opportunity to remove duplication and make the system more efficient. I just want to offer a couple of things. One is, as pros, we have people reporting into us across the country on data, and there has to be a better way of us being able to share data with RPRA and back forth, because we know
that what's being reported to us and what's being reported to RIP are different, and we need to be able to get to that quicker. And right now, there's not a quick way to get to that. Two, I think for verification, totally agree with what the last speaker said. I think we need simplified verification process across all 3 jurisdictions, and pros are already doing a lot of that work, and so you can leverage. And I would say that in Alberta, we already have a simplified verification procedure already in place. Can we simply leverage that tool? And that maybe goes to my third point. Really appreciate the openness to harmonization. Is there any willingness, because we're seeing a lot of progress in the other jurisdictions in them coming to the table and finding ways to work with us collaboratively. Is there any sense that Ontario is willing to come to other people, move to the other ways that people are doing as much, trying to get people to harmonize with them? Because I think there's lots of opportunity we're leaving on the table.
Yeah, and I think that's so thank you, Alan. I think so first, we've heard the comment around pro reporting and wanting to make improvements there, and especially around the adjustments, right? It would be great if we didn't have adjustments, but we have a lot of adjustments. And when the supply data is adjusted with RPRA, getting that information to your pro is critical as well. So we have heard about that particular enhancement that folks want. We do have quite a few to work through, and each one of those enhancements, as we work them through, has a business case, has to be supported in terms of the priorities that RPRA is putting into our registry system and the investments we're making into it. So we can't do all of them all at once, but that is definitely one we know about and have heard. I think around harmonization, it's really about those conversations with the other jurisdictions that we're starting. They started last year. We're working on formalizing them, and that is the goal, and that is the intent, to do what we can to work with the other jurisdictions. We have different policy objectives that each of our frameworks are trying to achieve, so there are limits to it, but that is absolutely the intent of creating some sort of formalized process of working with the other regulators in different jurisdictions.
Thanks, Mary. So I think we've come to the end of the Q&A time. Really appreciate the thoughtful questions, and thanks to the panel for your time. I'm going to turn it back over to Jess, but I do want to note we're going to stick around. So if you want to chat with any of us, come up and ask your questions. We're always interested in listening and engaging. So back over to Jess.
And thank you to everyone here. Again, I know it's been a thread throughout the whole conversation, but engaging with you, hearing from you is just really key to everything we do. So opportunities like this mean a lot, and we're really appreciative of the support and this two-way dialogue that we've been engaging in. A couple final housekeeping things. On your way out, again, no rush. You can stay and hang out, maybe stay cool for a little longer. Drop off your name badges at the front desk just so we can reuse the holders. A reminder and another plug for the survey. So again, in person, you have the QR code on your table, and online there is the link in the Zoom chat. So again, we'd love to hear your feedback, especially with this new setup. Let us know what we can do and how we can make these events better. So thank you again, and one more thing. Thank you to the venue, the library, our AV folks, the photographer, our caterers, really making it a really smooth day. And thank you to the communications team, my team, Julia, for putting this all together. It's a lot of work. So thank you again, and have a good day.